Hello, and a warm welcome to the Women of Crazy World podcast, a podcast that illuminates the extraordinary journeys, trials, and triumphs of remarkable women in enterprise across the African continent. Whether you're seeking motivation, valuable insights, inspiration, or a sense of belonging in a community that celebrates women's success stories, then this podcast is definitely the right platform for you. We have found that sharing stories and experiences is one of the most effective ways to change minds and provoke actions. Our host, Cindy Lamini, will be guiding us through life-transforming narratives as she connects us with her Pan-African network of women making massive moves in the marketplace. We hope that these women's journeys ignite and inspire you. And now I would like to introduce our fabulous host, Cindy Lamini.
Greetings to all the women of Crazy World out there. This is your host, Miss Cindy Dlamini, and I'm so excited to be taking the center stage alongside incredible women in various places and spaces across our African continent. Together, we'll be sharing profound insights, winning formulas, as well as intertwining our stories of success and empowerment. It's important to note, though, that this podcast isn't just about storytelling, nor is it limited to an exceptional listening experience, but it's an actual fact and movement. And your tuning in every month is crucial to the rhythm and growth of this movement. Now, with that being said, I'd like to encourage you to assist us in growing our podcast community by simply sharing the podcast link with your women networks far and wide. All right. Today we are in Malawi with the wonderful Kambuzi, who's all the way in Mzuzu, Malawi. Wangi, kindly introduce yourself to our fantastic audience today.
All right, thank you, Cindy. So, hi, everyone. My name is Wangiwe, Joanna Kambuzi, and I am really excited to be here today. Just a brief about me, I am a social entrepreneur, and I do run Mzuzu eHub, which is basically an entrepreneurship, technology, and innovation hub based here in Malawi, but we do work across the country and even partially in the region. I'm a mother of one. I have a son. He's 1 year, 10 months now, and his name is Bright. Also a wife to Daniel Mvalo, who's also based right here in Malawi. And I am pretty much a traveler. I love travel, so that's something that I always get excited about. And on my free time, I also like mentoring fellow young people that are actually venturing into entrepreneurship and the technology space as well. So yeah, that's a brief about me, and I'm very excited to be here today and share a few things about my journey as well as my enterprise development as I've been working on establishing my organization. Thank you.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic. I love that. We are a mother of one and wife to one. I love that one because you can be we can be wife to so many, but I'm so thankful you wife to one and mother to one. Yeah, no, I love the intro. And we're just going to go right into a bit more of a personal background questions, because you mentioned a bit that you are a mother of one, a wife to one husband, which is fantastic. But in your upbringing, Wangi, and this is before you became this fabulous entrepreneur and all of that, who has been the most influential person during your upbringing and why?
So I have had so many influential beings during my upbringing, but I think I always also get excited every time I recall how my dad actually used to introduce me to the business space when I was a kid. He's late as of now. But he always used to run certain business aside his job because he used to work as a pharmacy technician at the hospital. So the whole time I grew up, it was either I go to school, get back, instead of maybe thinking playtime, he'll be like, no, spend some time at the cosmetic store, or maybe go and spend some time at the pharmacy. So all the while, I think I was always thinking through how I think I'm probably cut out for always being a leader or running my own enterprise someday. just because I had someone who I was able to look up to. And I actually also never despised working because I also grew up in a space where both my parents had jobs outside the business landscape. So for me, that was like the key people that I lived and grew up actually always thinking through how they inspired me to become more employable, get the right education, and also at the same time be more inspired to venture into the entrepreneurial space.
Yo, that's so brilliant, Wangi. I love, our platform really primarily does reach out to the younger audience. And I'm so excited at just hearing this particular answer because you're just letting us know, some of us, when we were growing up, we were playing with dolls, we were riding bicycles, we were climbing trees. We were not thinking of sitting in some pharmaceutical business after school. So really, it just sounds to me that you are naturally born for greatness, and your parents made sure that they created an environment for you to thrive at a very young age. You didn't have to learn a couple of things at an older age. The things that are already instilled in you, which is fantastic, and it's something I hope that you do pass on to your son as well, as you are also just training him in that particular area. In your youth and all your entrepreneurial ventures at a young age, because you were deprived, having to play dolls, you were already calculating things and looking at pharmaceutical products. Is there any biggest failure that you had as a youth growing up? And what was the greatest lesson that you learned from that particular failure?
Yeah, I think, my whole story has a lot of lessons around failure and probably getting where I am. Maybe I would say almost 95% of my motivation to be here came from failure. And I always also get really inspired these days to share my story around failure because I think the past 2 years I was participating in the Africa Visionary Fellowship Program, which is under the Mzuzu Family Foundation. And what they did was they introduced all of us to a storytelling coach who actually kept pestering us to go beyond our story and actually remember each and every element that connects to where we are now. So like literally 95% of my story dwells on failure. So I'll share like two experiences. I think the first one when I was like 16 years old and I was enrolled into this program. I was getting a certificate in journalism. I used to work so hard. And all of a sudden, when I wrote my exam, I failed one subject in that program. And I think for the first time, I was really heartbroken because I invested so much in that program. And for me to fail, it was more or less like, where did I actually go wrong? Because I did all I can. This is like my favorite program. And then you don't expect to fail, and that's where it is. But I loved how it actually didn't partially break me because eventually I went back to repeat. I thought through it and I was like, okay, fine, let me go rewrite that course. And eventually I did pass. So the second time was when I left my job. That's now when I was in the corporate space. And I left my job and just decided to take a work break. So as I was saying, the second time was when I decided to leave my job from the corporate space. So I was working with the bank in 2016. And I was like, I think this working is maybe not for me. I need to take a break. And in the course of that, I established my first business. And literally that first business, I think, broke one side of me because of so many failures and the stagnancy that came with starting up a business. So why I'm sharing these two things is just how most of the times you tend to wonder how it's not everything that you can start that thrives. And one of the key reasons is that every point of failure always leads to the fact that you can either react positively and react negatively, but how you react is what matters more. And I think for me, getting here, it's pretty much that failure that contributed strongly.
Wangi, you are just gold on so many levels. I love this topic. I love what you said. Share your story around failure. This is something that, as entrepreneurs now, aspiring entrepreneurs, it's, failure is something we just feel like it's such a taboo. Like, oh, and I also love what you just said now. You said it's not everything that starts that thrives. So, you are basically just saying, as you start off this enterprise, whatever it is that you may want to venture into, leave that room for failure, because it's not necessarily that because you failed is the end of you. It's just another area of how can you do better and how can you work things out in a different way that can work for you. So I love this very much. And I would actually like to continue the conversation with you further on sharing your story around failure, because it's something that I think we need to master as young people in business. Us in business currently, I'm in business as well. Something I need to understand and just be flexible for. That failure happens, it's okay. Get up, rise again, and keep moving. So, Wangi, now that we've understood some particular truths on you, and that I love what you said as well, that 90% of, where you are now is 90% of your failures, which is fantastic. But now let me know, if you were to give your 20-year-old self some great advice, what would that be?
I always laugh about this question. I've been seeing this post on social media where they're sharing that can the 30s give advice to the 20s? I hope they're actually listening. Literally, I think for me, the best advice that I can actually share my 20-year-old self is to start thinking of what you want to do in your 30s earlier at that stage. And to even start early on doing certain things that you want to actually achieve in life. So for example, if you want to establish a business, there's no need for you to wait and say that, oh no, I'm going to do this maybe when I turn 30. You can do it at 20 and it's very okay. You're not going to lose anything. You're not going to miss anything that probably any other person would suggest that, oh no, in your 20s, probably you need to make all the mistakes. You can be different and decide to start early at that point. And literally, when you get into your 30s, you would have done 10 years of experience at something. And it's important to learn and be teachable as a young person. So my 20-year-old self, I do recall, I think I used to be a bit stubborn about certain things, but getting to my age now, I'm just like, oh no, I feel like if I had actually maybe given myself room at that point to learn a few things, that could have actually changed a lot of things. And I live every day learning. I spend half of my time on LinkedIn Learn, on Udemy, Coursera, trying to at least upskill or reskill certain skills that I already have because they contribute a lot to my career. And my last would be travel. You learn a lot from travel. You learn more about people, the world, their culture, and a lot that can actually provide you a sense of purpose in terms of what you can actually think of doing in life and maybe spend time connecting with people, collaborating with people, and doing something meaningful within our communities. So those are like the three key things that I can share to my 20-year-old self.
Man, I'm just thinking, Wangi, where were you in my life when I was 20? Things would have turned out well, maybe it was actually just, a blessing in disguise, because maybe I wouldn't even be doing this podcast if you're around. So I suppose all things work together for good at the end of it all. Wangi, we got a bit of understanding as to what it is that brought you into the entrepreneurship space, and that was, your background, your parents basically introducing you to that kind of environment. But what is it that led you to do the business that you're in now, what you're doing now? What inspired that? Like, why are you doing what you're doing?
So, two main things that inspired me to do what I'm doing now. The first thing being the power of community and what it can do to transform our communities. And for me, mentioning earlier how I had my first enterprise that didn't really thrive as I had hoped for, I really craved so much to be a part of a community of other young people, or even just community members that would share the same sense of purpose, that we would be able to develop something that would transform other people or even the society that we live in. So eventually, for me, after that failure, I was like, I think I need to be around other people. And I started basically engaging with fellow young people, learning more about what their challenges are, and also understanding how their experiences are in establishing enterprises, or even the support that they get. And I think at the time, I'll be very honest that I wouldn't say there was nothing that was existing, but literally when we introduced Mzuzu eHub, you would see how people are so eager to be a part of a community as well. So definitely that power of community is what brought us here, and also what keeps me going each and every day, because I see the community growing. And I see different solutions each and every day coming up from the community that is being utilized and leveraged across diverse communities out there and creating impact. And the second part is where I recall the 8-year-old me that I had a privilege to get access to learning how to use a computer. And that's not a typical story, especially for a Malawian 8-year-old child, not just a girl child, but any child. So looking at that, I grew very passionate about digital inclusion, especially around provision of skills for children, young men and women to be able to actually have access to diverse skills that can enhance their employability, as well as also be able to enhance their productivity on a day-to-day life in terms of how they are improving their contribution to the digital economy. So here we are. That's basically what we do, and the inspiration that we had to get here.
Man, this is such exciting work that you do. The sense of community. I mean, as an entrepreneur myself, I understand that so well, because you just went back and said when you established your first business and you failed, you thought to yourself, man, if I had a team or had people that walked with me in this direction, perhaps it wouldn't have been this bad. So yes, the sense of community, I love that. It's your core. It's what got you to rise, and from that, you're now raising, youths around you. You're raising, young girls around you, are raising just children in general, particularly in the ICT space, which is so interesting, because that's an area that, women don't find ourselves in particularly really the STEM industry and the STEM space. And so I'm more picky on that when it comes to you, that, you are interested in this whole digital space because as an 8-year-old, you got the opportunity and you wanted others to experience the same. How is that in relation to, because I deal with women a lot, and I know that women, really shy away from this particular industry or space because it's been male dominated for so long. Would you say that that's one of the myths, a common myth about your industry right now, especially the ICT space, that it's really a male dominated space and not much room for females? Or are we seeing change in that? What would you contribute towards that question?
Yeah, so I think at this stage is not really a common myth, because we've literally had evidence that's available around the gender digital divide, and also okay, that part is possibly thing. I think it's really evident and present within our society in terms of the male domination, and also the penetration of internet and adoption of tech, especially between the male and female counterparts. And I think what's really interesting at this point is that we have started developing an interest, and I'm saying we because that includes key stakeholders from development organizations, government, different organizations locally, internationally, that are actually supporting bridging that gender digital divide that actually exists in the tech space. And what I actually also like is how at this stage, we are seeing more role models than previously. I'm very sure if maybe I had seen a lot of role models when I was in primary or secondary school, I would have even been more inspired maybe to go and do engineering or something else. But nowadays, there are so many role models that you can actually relate to. So there is definitely hope that this common myth will actually be resolved as we progress with our different interventions that are coming up.
Awesome stuff. Okay, now with that being said, what are the surprises though that you've come across lately in the ICT space and just generally what you do in general? Are there any surprises about your industry at all?
I think what really surprised me is just how fast so many changes happen in this industry. So you would be in Malawi, yes, but now what's happening in South Africa is so different from here. And if you go to the US, what's also happening there is very different. And it's just how you see that those differences, they create a very huge gap. And it's instead of sometimes that gap being filled, it continues to grow because of the pace of how the changes are happening. It's quite a revolution anyway. So I think seeing different revolutions that have happened and where we are, it's pretty much something that you look at and you're like, oh, okay, so where did we miss it? At what point maybe did we miss it that there's other like industries on the global space that are maybe 10 times or 40 times ahead of other people? And that's just something that's continuing to leave people behind. And we need to make sure that we start to fill out those gaps that are actually being continued to be developed, because then there's no like solutions that are being attached to whatever revolution is actually happening right now.
Yeah, the issues around revolution, is that an African problem or is that a global problem? Is that what you're seeing globally or more specific zoning into Africa?
I think I see it more in Africa, because you know how you travel to countries like Estonia in Europe, and it's like they're in a different world. And then you come here and it's also a different world. So definitely those are like the gaps that you see, like, okay, so what went wrong? Where did we miss it?
I suppose I'm so glad that you guys are spearheading all of this and you're asking the right questions, because that gives Africa hope. I love Europe, I love the US, I love everywhere else. But when we have Wangiwe on the front line asking the right questions, Africa will thrive one day. Now tell me, Wangiwe, if you had 10 times the budget, for your business right now, what is it that you'd spend it on and why?
So, I think that question comes in very handy when we're actually rethinking and reflecting on so many aspects of our enterprise at this time. We've been existent for like 6 years, and we've learned so many lessons with the different interventions we've been implementing. But if I had like 10 times the budget that we currently have, it would mean a lot towards expanding and scaling almost all the programs that we implement, and the reach would actually not just be about Malawi, but actually Southern Africa. And that includes establishment of e-hubs, whereby we actually will work across all the districts in Malawi, providing access to digital technology skills to at least about 180 young people in each district annually. And at the same time, we'll be able to also scale our enterprise development support through provision of access to finance. So many entrepreneurs fail because of the challenge around accessing finance, and accelerating investment support is something that currently we're looking at strongly, because trainings are other things, coaching and mentoring is another thing. But if you don't provide resources to the entrepreneurs, it doesn't mean anything in the end, because there will be so many of them that remain stagnant because, well, I can't afford to buy this type of equipment that will enhance my productivity. And also that means growth in infrastructure that will also contribute strongly to community development. So that's definitely what I would do with that budget. Are you about to invest in us? Should I send my bank details?
And I think, yeah, pass them through. Let's forward to whoever we need to. I was about to ask you, are you coming to Eswatini?
Oh gosh. Man, probably soon. You should invite
Yeah,
me, I will.
I heard that the Southern African. I got excited, thinking, yes, I count in one Southern Africa. We're in there.
Yeah, you're in
Uh,
there somewhere.
Right, I think maybe towards my final question, because our time is almost up, is what would you say has fundamentally changed about your industry since you started working in it? And the follow-up question to that is, are the changes, positive or negative in your view?
Okay. I think what has really changed is the interest from support organizations. And it's a very positive change because currently we're seeing a lot of improvement. I'll speak from the Malawi context and maybe also look at the African context. Malawi has like a nascent ecosystem because introduction of hubs were not as many as maybe you can get in South Africa or Nairobi. And we've seen a lot of establishment of new emerging hubs recently, which is a very positive thing. But the contribution has also come in through diverse programs under different organizations as well as government. So for instance, here in Malawi, we've seen about 10 tech hubs that were established through the support of the Digital Malawi project that is financed by World Bank. And it also came with a lot of capacity strengthening through growth funds and also funds that would be diverted towards program implementation. So I think that's something really positive because it's really rare that support organizations would grow an interest in that space. And at the same time, we've also seen like a new wave where recently we've gotten a project under the European Union in Malawi, as well as UNDP, that is fostering access to finance for emerging entrepreneurs, where every entrepreneur that will be enrolling into the incubation programs will have access to financing about 12,500 US dollars. That's very new, but it's a welcome development. So like there's positive investment support coming in, positive capacity strengthening coming in, and it's a sector that's becoming really vibrant, both here locally in Malawi, but also across Africa. Because we've seen the growth of emerging tech hubs, innovation hubs, incubators, co-working facilities, and that's bringing a lot of community building and also opportunities for our local communities to actually thrive. So I'm very excited for the future.
Sounds super excited even on my end. I keep saying you said Southern Africa, so I know I'm in. All right, this is probably going to be like the last of few questions. You mentioned something about loving to learn. You're always on LinkedIn, this and a particular, always look at particular resources to expand your knowledge, your growth. So if I am a Cindy Dlamini here and I'm interested in establishing an e-hub wherever it may be, where do I start? What do I read about? Where are the resources? Where do I find them? Where do I go? And how do I get myself going? And what advice do you give me to even start up in the first place?
Okay. So I think where to start, I think I love desk work. Sometimes you don't have to like begin by starting big. You can start by doing your desk work. It's as simple as, at least if you have access to the internet, connect to your internet, do your research around who are the existing players that already exist that you can learn from and what they're doing, why they're doing that. And my other area that I really like to provide for advice is where you do that desk work, you also get up and you visit those spaces, whether it's both in your country or you want to visit cross country, is something that also actually helps in making sure that you have a better understanding of what the kind of enterprises that we are all about and what we can actually provide insight for. And connecting with the people that are actually doing the work is also very crucial. And just something interesting, being enterprise support organizations, we are always open to share insights and even share lessons that we've learned on the way for someone that is actually looking towards establishing an e-hub or a tech hub or an innovation hub. So basically, those can actually be helpful, but there's also diverse programs that are actually coming up that you can actually be affiliated with. It could be different associations or networks that can actually provide better insight on how you can get trained. In Africa, we have AfriLabs. It's a network of hubs that you can be affiliated to, even as an individual, as an entrepreneur, and you get access to training and actually coaching around different spheres that can actually enhance your knowledge in this industry.
Man, that's fantastic. And you just mentioned that you are also an open door policy, to teaching, to learning, to training. On that particular note, where can the audience find you if they want to learn more about Wangi? What does she do? How do they get in touch with you? How do they, participate in your service offering? Where are you? Where are you on the beautiful wide web? Let's share that. Let's put that out there so people can get in touch with you. So they want to learn more.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we're present online. We have a website. It's www.mzuzuehub.org. And we're also present on all social platforms from Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, as well as Twitter. I think now it's X. It's so awkward for me to say that. And we're also available through direct contact. I think like for me and the organization both, you can reach us through hello@mzuzuehub.org or Wangiwe.Kambuzi at mzuzuehub.org, and we'll be able to actually provide any relevant insights you may need.
Awesome stuff. Now, Wangi, my very last question to know, and we've got 1 minute to answer this before we just say goodbye to you. If there's one thing you'd want to be remembered for in this life, what would that be?
That's a really tough one. But yeah, I would love to be remembered for the meaningful contribution that I've made in society by empowering fellow young men and women, and also transforming livelihoods through diverse interventions that we've been able to do through Mzuzu eHub. Thank you. And for my kindness.
I love it. And for my kindness. Listen, Wangi, it has been an absolute privilege and joy just to have you, participate on our podcast. And this is our third, episode, and it's so insightful. And you know what? As you're joining on and empowering and raising communities, empowering the youth, changing the tech space, we wish you all the best at WCW. We're just so honored to have had you. We are going to be following your progress, and we are going to be asking you, are you coming to Eswatini soon?
Hopefully.
Thank you so much for your time, my dears. I really wish you a pleasant evening ahead with the young man and the pleasant husband as well. Good night to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Cindy.
Thank you for tuning in to this month's episode of the Women of Crazy World podcast. Remember to share the link to your women's network on your social media platforms. And because we absolutely love to hear from you, do drop us a comment in the comment section below on how this episode has inspired you. Looking forward to learning and growing with you once again. So do join us next month at 3 p.m. for yet another live transformational episode. For now, it's goodbye from